"You're not putting your name on that property. It belongs to the family. Sign the transfer or get out of my house." That was my aunt, standing in my late grandmother's kitchen, holding a manila envelope she'd clearly prepared before I even arrived. My grandmother had been dead for 11 days. I didn't sign anything that night, but I didn't fight back either. I just said, "Let me think about it." And I drove home in the dark with my hands shaking on the wheel the whole way down the 401. Let me back up. My grandmother, Nana Bay, everyone called her, passed away in early March. She was 83, sharp, until the very end, and she owned a small property in Prince Edward County, a 2-bedroom cottage on about 4 acres. Nothing fancy, but the kind of place that had been in the family for 40 years. She also had a registered savings account worth roughly $180,000, which she built up carefully over decades of working as a bookkeeper in Belleville. I'm her granddaughter, her only grandchild from my mother's side. My mother passed when I was 17, ovarian cancer, fast and brutal. And after that, Nana Bia and I became each other's people. I would drive down to see her every few weeks. I helped her sort her medications when her eyesight got bad. I sat with her through 2 hip surgeries. When she was hospitalized the last time, I took 2 weeks off from my job at the radiology clinic in Ottawa and slept in the chair beside her bed. My aunt, her other daughter, lived 40 minutes away and visited maybe 4 times a year. Nana Bea knew all of this, and she made sure her will reflected it. She left the cottage and 60% of the savings account to me. The remaining 40% of the savings went to my aunt. It was drawn up properly by a notary in Picton, witnessed, everything by the book. Nana Bea had told me about it 2 years before she died. One afternoon when we were sitting on the porch watching the water, she said, "I want you to have the place, Tess. You're the one who actually showed up." Her name was on the deed. Her signature was on the will. I thought that was that. I was wrong. My aunt had a son. My cousin, late 30s, never left the county. The kind of guy who talks about being owed things by the universe while doing very little to earn them. The two of them had apparently been discussing Nana Bea's assets for years. I found this out later. At the time, all I knew was that 11 days after the funeral, I was standing in that kitchen being handed an envelope. Inside was a document, a deed transfer, already filled out with my name in one field and my aunt's name in the beneficiary line. Also inside, a letter on what appeared to be legal stationery, claiming that a revised will had been located, dated 8 months before Nana Bea died, which left the property and the full savings account to my aunt. I read it twice. Then I looked up at her. Where did this come from? She changed her mind, my aunt said. She told me she regretted the original. She wanted the property to stay with the immediate family line. I am the immediate family line, I said. Her daughter's daughter. Your mother is gone, she said. Just like that, flat. I put the documents back in the envelope and I said I needed time. She told me the notary would need the signature by end of the month. She said it in the tone of someone who had already decided the outcome. I drove home. I called my partner Scott from the car and told him what happened. He was quiet for a moment and then said, "Don't sign a single thing. Not until we talk to a lawyer." That was the right instinct. The next morning, I called the notary in Picton who had drafted Nana Bea's original will. I'll call him Mr. Fournier. He'd been handling her affairs for 15 years. I told him what my aunt had shown me and asked if he had any record of a revised document. He was quiet for a moment too long. "Teresa," he said. He always called me that. "I drafted one will for your grandmother. The one you already have a copy of. I have no record of any amendment or revision, and I would have been the one to prepare it. Is it possible she went to a different notary?" "It's possible," he said, "but she never mentioned it to me, and she spoke to me 6 weeks before she passed about her estate. She didn't indicate any changes." I thanked him and hung up. Then I called a lawyer, an estates lawyer in Ottawa, a woman named, I'll just call her my lawyer, who came recommended through a colleague at the clinic. I emailed her photos of everything my aunt had given me, and we met 2 days later. She looked at the documents for a long time before she spoke. This notary signature, she said, tapping the revised will. Have you verified this person is real? I hadn't. She looked it up while I sat there. The notary named on the document had retired from practice in 2019 and passed away in 2021. The stamp on the document was dated 2024. That's a problem, she said. That was putting it mildly. Here's the thing about me. I am not a dramatic person. I grew up quiet, the kind of kid who avoided conflict because conflict in our house usually ended with someone crying or leaving. After my mom died, I got even quieter. I kept my head down, did my work, stayed out of other people's business. My aunt had always been a difficult personality, dismissive, territorial, the type who corrects people at dinner tables. But I had never believed, not once in 31 years, that she was capable of something like this. I sat in that lawyer's office and felt something shift in my chest. Not grief, not even anger, not yet. Something colder. The thought, she has been planning this. This wasn't reactive. This was prepared. I went home and I did not call my aunt. I did not tell her what I'd found. I did not act any differently than I had the week before. Scott asked me what I was doing. Collecting, I said. He looked at me for a second. Okay, he said, I'll follow your lead. That's the man I have in my corner. I want to be clear about that. Over the next 3 weeks, while my aunt sent me 2 more texts asking about the signature and 1 voicemail where she said she was just trying to protect Nana's wishes, I built a file. I got a certified copy of Nana Bea's original will from Mr. Fournier. I requested the death record for the notary named on the fraudulent document. Straightforward through Service Ontario. I pulled my own phone records showing the frequency of calls between my grandmother and me over the last 2 years of her life. I gathered text messages where Nana Bea had specifically referenced the cottage coming to me. She had sent me one the previous Christmas that said, "Merry Christmas, the place is yours when I go, I mean it, make sure you keep the bird feeder." I screenshot that one and printed it. I also spoke very carefully to my grandmother's neighbor in the county, a woman who had known Nana Bea for 20 years and visited regularly. She told me that in the last year of Nana Bea's life, my aunt and cousin had come around more often than usual. She remembered one visit, about 8 months before Nana Bea died, where they'd stayed for several hours and Nana Bea had seemed off afterward, quieter than usual. I wrote down exactly what she said. I asked if she'd be willing to make a statement. She said yes without hesitating. 3 weeks after the night in that kitchen, I had an appointment with my lawyer. I brought the file. She went through it page by page, nodding slowly, and at the end she said, "This is document fraud. We can go to civil court for the estate, but this also meets the threshold for a criminal report." "I want to do both," I said. She looked at me. "Once you file a criminal report, things move in ways you can't control. Your aunt will know." "Good," I said. I am not someone who uses that word lightly, but I meant it. We filed with the Ontario Provincial Police the following week. I brought everything: the original will, the fraudulent document, the notary's death record, the neighbor's written statement, my communication records with Nana Bea, the lawyer's analysis, the officer who took my statement, I'll call him Corporal H, read through the file without speaking for almost 15 minutes. Then he looked up and said, "This is thorough." "I used to organize patient records," I told him. Old habit. While that moved through the system, my lawyer filed to have the fraudulent will dismissed in probate court. We submitted all the same evidence. The estate was frozen pending investigation. My aunt called me the night the freeze notice was served. I let it go to voicemail. She left a message that lasted 4 minutes and 40 seconds. I know because my phone logged it, where she said I was being hysterical, that I was misunderstanding the document, that the notary stamp must be an old one Nana had, that I was tearing the family apart for money, and that my mother would be ashamed of me. I listened to it once, then I saved it to the file. 2 weeks later, the OPP made contact with my aunt and cousin for questioning. I don't know exactly what happened in that room because I wasn't there. What I know is what came out afterward, in pieces, through my lawyer. My cousin cracked first. He admitted he had helped source the notary stamp. Apparently he'd found it online, one of those document prop suppliers. The kind that get used in theater productions. He'd genuinely thought, that because the original notary was dead, no one would check whether the stamp was still valid. He had not anticipated that stamps have registration numbers that can be cross-referenced with the Law Society of Ontario. When the investigator pressed him on who had prepared the fraudulent document, he named my aunt. She had typed it herself on her home computer. They found the file. I was at work when my lawyer called to tell me. I was in the hallway outside the imaging suite, still in my scrubs. I sat down on the floor against the wall, and I just breathed. For about 30 seconds, I didn't say anything. "Are you there?" my lawyer asked. "Yes," I said. "I'm here. The estate will go back through probate with the original will. I expect the cottage and the full 60% to transfer to you within the next 3 to 4 months. The criminal proceeding is separate and ongoing." "Okay," I said. "Teresa, this was a serious fraud. You documented it properly, and you followed every step correctly. You should feel good about that." I didn't feel good exactly. I felt something more specific than that. A kind of quiet settling. Like when you've been carrying something heavy for a long time, and you finally put it down, and you realize how tired your arms were. The following month, Scott and I drove down to Prince Edward County for the first time since the funeral. We walked the property in the late afternoon, the fields still brown from winter, the lake flat and gray. The bird feeder by the back porch was empty. I made a note to refill it. We sat on the porch steps for a while, and I thought about Nana Bea saying, on a summer afternoon 2 years before, "The place is yours when I go." How ordinary the moment had seemed. How she'd said it like stating a fact about the weather. My aunt's case is still working through the system. I've been advised not to comment on the active proceeding, and I won't. My cousin has his own legal situation to deal with. What I can say is this: I didn't fight for that cottage because of the money, or even because of the property itself. I fought for it because my grandmother made a decision in her right mind and put it in writing and trusted that it would be honored. And 2 people who knew her decided that her wishes were less important than their own entitlement. She spent 40 years building something quiet and good. The least I could do was make sure it ended up where she intended. Scott asked me last week what I wanted to do with the place. Rent it out, eventually, maybe. Or keep it for summers. He mentioned that his sister might want to come up in July. If that was okay. I said yes. I said, let's open it up properly. Let's use it. The bird feeder is full now. The finches found it in about 4 days. Nana Bea would have had something to say about that. She always did. I keep thinking about that kitchen, the manila envelope on the counter. My aunt's face, so certain, so prepared. She had been rehearsing that moment for a long time, I think. And I'd walked in completely unprepared, the way you do when you've spent your whole life assuming that the people you grew up around are operating in at least basic good faith. They weren't. And that's the part that took me the longest to sit with. Not the fraud itself, but the timeline of it. The planning. The fact that while I was driving down to visit Nana Bea, sitting with her through surgeries, learning which medications went with which meals, my aunt was having a different set of conversations entirely. That kind of betrayal doesn't land all at once. It settles in slowly, like water finding cracks. What I've come to understand is that what happened had a logic to it, even if that logic is ugly. My aunt believed that wanting something badly enough, and being bold enough to reach for it, was the same as deserving it. My cousin believed the same. They mistook entitlement for a plan. And a plan built on a forged stamp and a dead notary's name was always going to come apart. Not because the universe punishes dishonesty in some poetic way. I don't think it works like that. But because dishonesty requires maintenance. You have to keep lying to hold the first lie up. And they hadn't thought far enough ahead to do that well. I think about who I had to be to get through those 3 weeks between that kitchen and the OPP interview. I had to stay quiet when every instinct said to confront. I had to be methodical when I was genuinely grieving. For Nana Bea. For the version of my family I'd believed in. I had to trust that documentation was more powerful than anger. None of that came naturally. I had to choose it, one day at a time, while my phone buzzed with voicemails about how I was being hysterical. What got me through was something I don't think I could have named in the middle of it, but I can name now. It was the combination of knowing what was right, thinking clearly about how to prove it, and refusing to quit before the work was done. Those three things together. Not any one of them alone. I've met people with strong moral instincts who fall apart under pressure, and I've met sharp, persistent people who use those qualities in genuinely terrible directions. It's only when the three run together that you end up somewhere worth being. Nana Bea had all three of those things. She worked as a bookkeeper for 30 years, kept clean records, never took shortcuts, built something honest and small and real. She made a decision in her right mind and put it in writing. I think the least I owed her was to be the same kind of person when it mattered. The bird feeder is full. The finches came back. I'm going to be okay.